I'm really stupid. Can you educate me a little bit on Marxism? I don't know what it is for real. Marxism is just a theory on how commodity production works under a capitalist organization of the economy, how we have evolved under the industrial.
Okay, this is not true. This is literally not true. This is such a shitty way to fucking talk about Marxism, dude. Like, I know it's hard, but talking about commodity production is a very specific part of Marxism, but it's not really like the essence of what Marxism is. You know, Marxism is about a way of relating to history and society and even philosophy being, you know, it's a very specific thing to just say like commodity production. You know, it sounds really pretentious.
We have evolved under the industrial revolution and onwards to have our current capitalist production.
This is probably the worst. Like what he just said is flat out wrong. To be actual, the truth is that Marxists have had a very rough time explaining how we got to the capitalism that you're looking at here with Amazon. The basic idea is Marxists were the best at talking about the old capitalism, but this one is Marxists don't really know how we got here, you know? It's just a really silly thing to say. That's not what Marxism is.
The relationship between those who produce the work, the workers, versus those who profit from the labor that you put in, the bourgeoisie, the capital owners.
No, plainly false. He's talking about the labor theory of value, but the labor theory of value came from the classical economists. It wasn't Marx's sweeping insight that all workers are being ripped off by the capitalists. That was something he was getting from the classical political economists. I know I'm kind of being like an actually type of guy, but I want you to actually think about it. If you're going to talk about something so specific as Marxism, you should get it right. You should actually talk about like Marx's origins and his break from Hegel and his humanism and his dialectic, and you should vaguely be able to sum those kinds of things up. His materialism, you should be able to sum those things up. Is this fine for normie Hasan fans? That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think it is. For normie, you don't have to talk about Marxism. You just talk about anything else.
The ultimate goal is to democratize the economy.
Okay. This is flat out wrong. This is the most wrong thing I've ever heard of. Marx and Engels both routinely mocked people who were overly enthusiastic about the word democracy. I'll give you a few examples of this in history. Marx used to talk about the charlatans and quacks of democracy. Marx and Engels were disgusted at the name that Lazarus and the others were coming up with for the Workers' Party in Germany, which was the Social Democratic Party. In letters between Marx and Engels, they were like, what a name, what a horrible name. And then Engels, furthermore, talks about how bourgeois equality is a relic of the democratic past, and that communism is going to overcome this notion of equality, since human beings are not actually equal. They're only equal in the formal sense for the democratic bourgeois state. So the idea that Marxism is just democratizing the economy is really bizarre. That's not true. That was a propaganda talking point of the social democrats who actually weren't all Marxists. That was one of their talking points. Oh, we just want to be Democrats for the social sphere as well. But even then, they didn't actually mean by democracy, workplace democracy. That's a way recent invention.
Than just the way that we theorize how our current governance should operate in a ideal world. Like democracy should operate in a certain way, right? With means of accountability in the form of elections. Kind of like that.
Okay, Hasan, where does Marx ever talk about that? Where do prominent Marxists talk about that?
But for the workplace, there are multiple different ways of arriving at that end goal, but the ultimate goal is for workers to own the means of production.
Hasan's the only guy who just talks out of his ass in front of like 30,000 people and gets away with it. Okay, so the idea that the end goal is the democratization of the economy. Marx and Engels never talk about a democratization. They talk about the proletarian dictatorship, and they outline the manner by which socialist command of the economy might happen. And they're very clear that it's through scientific means. It's not based on elections whatsoever. Actually, one of the famous reproaches of anarchists like Bakunin toward Marx was that the Marxist socialism would be like some nightmarish technocratic dictatorship of scientific experts dictatorially controlling the economy and eliminating the contingencies of human freedom. So he doesn't know what he's talking about on that count. Then secondly,
but the ultimate goal is for workers to own the means of production.
So when he says the ultimate goal is for workers to own the means of production, there's two things wrong, right? Marxism doesn't speak in terms of ultimate goals. Marx talked about how talking about end state societies was undialectical because societies are always changing. And that second, that communism is not an ideal society; it's a real movement. That's what's Marx's view. Marx didn't think of communism as some kind of like end goal society. When Marx did talk about communist society, though, he doesn't actually talk about workers owning the means of production. He only talks about it in the negative. Like, for example, he talks about it like hypothetically in a communist world where there is no money, or hypothetically in a communist world where there is no division of labor. You can fish in the morning, do whatever. Like he'll give you examples like those, but then again, he doesn't really do that to illustrate what communist society is going to look like as much as it is to like create hypotheticals that help us understand capitalist society better. The idea of workers owning the means of production and democratizing the economy is a good propaganda talking point that mass organizations oftentimes were saying publicly. But this is not what the essence of Marxism is. Yeah, Marxism is what informs the praxis of the organizations. It's not like the propaganda an organization puts out is not the same thing as the theory that goes into it. Propaganda is something that's created to win people over and to formulate things in a way that's going to gain the support.
Communism never worked in real life. People who believe in it are delusional. Yeah. Well, capitalism isn't working in real life right now, so okay, fair. Sure, communism never worked in real life. Okay, how about that? Let's just say...
So this is why I think like Hasan's position is super weak. It's mainly because you could just say, yeah, communism does work. It actually did work in history for what its goals were at the time, which was to industrialize countries, create a minimal standard of living, and educate people and provide minimal healthcare. It worked very well doing those things. And he could also say, and beyond that, it works very well in China. You could use the China example. China's an example of communists in power who are ruling the country and implementing a system that works very well for eliminating poverty.
It did it, okay? Those very same metrics of success are also literally not working in real life right now under a capitalist organization of the economy. So what do? Do we just keep crying about how communism didn't work, or do we try to fix the system that we're currently existing under?
Yeah, honestly, no wonder why he doesn't debate Destiny, because Destiny could just easily say some shit like, well, the system currently may not be working, but we can isolate the specific things about the system that aren't working and deal with them accordingly. Why do we have to like start something from scratch? And he would win that argument if he said that. I would rather say something like, yes, capitalism seems to be failing, but we should always keep in mind that capitalism has failed before. It failed in 1929. It failed during the end of Bretton Woods in the 70s. It failed in 2008. And somehow it keeps on chugging. It's really not enough to say it fails. You know, how has its existence been prolonged by so much? Especially the 1929 crisis, the Great Depression.
We fix the system that we're currently existing under through a series of reforms. Pretty sure this is capitalism work.
You can't even get healthcare, dude. How are you gonna reform your way into fucking communism? You can't even do basic shit, dude. You were jumping for joy like it was some kind of victory that you got Biden elected.
Working? Really? You think it's working? It's working for you, maybe, because you're on Twitch. You can watch me. You know,
Okay, this is something I know is really stupid. Hasan, I don't know if you know this, but there's a ton of people who watch Twitch who also work. And there's a ton in my community, and I know it for a fact. Watching Twitch is not a fucking measure of wealth in America.
Slowly destroying the fucking planet because we care more about the profit motive than the lives of the next generation that will come before us.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't want to be the guy that have to like bring this up, but you realize that communist states were not like eco-friendly because they weren't. The goal is literally not profit. So a lot of lefties will tell you shit like, oh, the reason carbon emissions go up is just for profits. It's not really true. States, whether it's Russia, even America, really struggle to meet the demands of their population, to keep the jobs and keep the standard of living or create a standard of living. And it's almost like profit is a secondary thing. If you think these corpos only exist to get profit, you're super naive. They're all in bed with the government and they fulfill political goals. The main issue is not so much that people care too much about profit. The main issue is that we don't have the like institutions to deal with the climate problem. We like, for example, we don't have the organization to mobilize people, to evacuate people, to shelter people, things like that. We don't have that relationship between government and even when coronavirus happened in America, like it was chaos, you know?
I'm doing all right. Okay, I am working for, the factory owner. Working for those who are executives at massive corporations, working for the fucking finance bros, but it's not working for you.
Hasan, that's really all well and fine, but you also work for those people, and you are like a propaganda arm for them as well. That's the truth, dude. Like, Hasan, why has Twitch allowed you to get away with things that no one else can get away with? You're like one of the biggest streamers on Twitch. Is that because you're like this big threat to the corporations? I don't think it is. I just don't. I think corporations tend to love you, and it's almost like the biggest political streamer on Twitch is none other than you. You know, you'd think, here's why I kind of like Destiny, right? And I don't know him personally, but I kind of like him more than Hasan. This is why. You'd think that Twitch would appoint Destiny, who's like the biggest establishment shill of all time. You'd think a guy like that would be the biggest streamer on Twitch, right? But he's not. He's actually not really liked, as far as I know, by the same people he shills for on the daily. Like, Destiny's just naive. He just thinks like one day they will accept him, and they're never going to accept him, right? Hasan talks shit about these people, and they love him. They actually love him. And it's like Destiny is a full-on, like, calls himself a neo-lib. He's just like, yeah, I defend, establishment, whatever. It don't make no sense.
We here in the United States of America live under the comfort of being a part of the labor aristocracy. So...
Oh my God. Okay, the first thing I want to say is, Hasan, speak for yourself, dude. Hasan, you're the fucking labor aristocracy, dude. You're like you're a pampered West Coast guy who worked for TYT, and I don't hate you for it, but like, dude, you are not the same as a fucking West Virginia coal miner, okay? So why don't you speak for yourself, dude? And I'm saying this as someone who comes from a very privileged background. I would never lump all of you in with my specific background. Like, it's not we, dude. It's just you.
Our relationship, no matter where we are as a worker, our relationship with the means of production.
I bet Hasan goes to like lefty gatherings, and if they don't know who he is, he's like, yeah, I'm an Amazon worker. When Hasan joins the DSA, they're gonna be like, what's your profession? I work for Amazon. You are the true proletariat. Like, Hasan's trying to be like, yeah, I'm a worker, but I'm just like, I get more money. No, dude, you're not a worker.
So the entire system is run by exploiting the third world, the global south. And you kind of recognize that. So you're like, yeah, it's kind of working. I have McDonald's. Things are all right for me. I can fucking order a Big Mac and shit, but it's not. You no longer leftist reform capitalism? What? When have I ever strayed away from social democracy in the short term, socialism in the long term? Like, it's literally always been what I've advocated.
You can't even get Bernie in the primary short term. A lot of people would look at me, right? Guy like me. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. So they're like, oh, what's your issue with Hasan? It's probably because he's not too radical, right? And the truth is, I think Hasan is too radical. I think Hasan talks about how he wants a social democracy, and he can't even get a Bernie democracy in the Democratic Party. Hasan can't even formulate an act greater than voting for Joe Biden. So Hasan, I think even your social democracy is too radical. You're too leftist. You're way too leftist for your ambitions, You should rethink it. Look, guys, is it a coincidence that the biggest streamer on Twitch is pretending to be like this anti-corporate, anti-establishment guy? I will give you guys the test. You want the test? I have a perfect litmus test so you could see who's faking it and who's real. Ready? Ask them what they think about Jimmy Dore. Forget about, they can call themselves a communist, they can call themselves a tanky, whatever. Just ask them what they think about Jimmy Dore. And if they bitch about Jimmy Dore, yeah, they're establishment. That's an establishment guy.
Day one, I've been advocating for that. And a lot of people, like a lot of Marxist-Leninists, for example, fucking hate that approach, okay? Because I'm a fucking revisionist.
That's not why I'm a real Marxist-Leninist, right? A lot of these other guys, they're LARPing, right? They're LARPing. My views are going to be very similar to what you're going to find in actual Marxist-Leninist Communist Party members And I'm gonna give it to you from that perspective. The issue with you, Hasan, is not that we have an issue with your reformism, because that's just doesn't mean anything, right? You can say that you want the Big Rock Candy Mountain as your end goal. It doesn't matter. It's not what's decisive. What's decisive is the positions you're taking in concrete material terms in our political. Which classes do you virtue signal to, and which classes do you condemn and oppose? And you're against Jimmy Dore, which means you're on the side of the establishment. You're affiliated with BreadTube, TYT, Limousine, this kind of fake PMC leftists. We do a class, Hasan, we Marxist-Leninists are not going to judge you for your ideology. We don't care about ideology. Trust me. Marxist-Leninists who are in power and who are they're big enough to like be mature, they don't care about your ideology. It doesn't matter. What matters is your class. Which class do you appeal to and represent? That's what we're going to focus on, right? That's why Jimmy Dore never has to fucking mention the name Karl Marx, and we will like Jimmy Dore because he represents the interests of the American working class. So we're going to actually entertain Jimmy Dore. We don't really care about ideology. Ideology doesn't matter that much. If anything, ideology usually just gets in the way. You know, this idea that we Marxist-Leninists are like super ideological is not true. Ideology clouds your judgment. Ideology is something you look out for, you know? Yeah, real MLs are very pragmatic. Very pragmatic.
Some YouTube videos here and understand that you're against the concept of meritocracy, but I don't understand how people would be pushed to progress. Even myself, I wouldn't be pushed to do more if I wasn't rewarded. Dude, you wouldn't be pushed to do more in this current organization of the economy. The point is, I'll explain it to you easily, okay?
People just don't have the opportunities, but I think they would if they had them. And if you're living in a democratically controlled workplace, why would you push yourself? Honestly, you're not going to have the opportunity to have your own piece of land and do your why would you? You wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would just sit around being as lazy as possible.
When I worked for someone else, I was still doing something that I loved, okay? And
Hasan, you're not a fucking worker, okay? Working for your uncle at a YouTube media organization is not quite the same thing as being a fucking construction worker. You're not a worker, dude. Can you please stop with this nonsense?
I worked really fucking hard at it, but the fruits of my labor were never mine, okay? I had to do everything I can to make my own way within that corporate structure, even though it was a startup, so I had a lot.
Bruh, Hasan gets on camera in front of 30,000 people and tells them that he's the proletarian Marx is talking about. Hasan's uncle exploited his labor. His labor was exploited by his uncle, dude. Got his labor exploited by his uncle. This is the true proletariat.
A lot more leeway, a lot more bandwidth to be able to experiment with certain things. And because of a lack of division of labor there, I was able to show that, like, this is literally what I'm doing. But they could very easily take away my IP, give it to other people, cut my fucking time.
Having power isn't the same thing as class. I don't know. So Americans have this stupid idea in their head that class is the same as power, and it's actually two different things. So material relations to production are not defined by how much power you have in society. They could be an indication of how much power, but power isn't actually what's essential. Power is political, okay? So what he's talking about is like workplace politics, right? That's what he's talking about. It's not, class is not that, okay? Class is not just being in a position of power. It's also possessing a certain relationship to the mode of production. Not just the means of production, but the mode of production. So that's important to keep in mind.
And tell me, you can't do that anymore. You have to do this instead. That is alienation from your labor, okay? This is a...
I want to kind of just end it and talk to Jackson, but the fucking Keck W's keep on rolling. Hasan, that is not alienation. Hasan's like, yeah, when mom tells me I gotta finish my broccoli, that's alien. No, it's not what alienation is, okay? It's not. It's not anywhere close to what alienation is, okay? I mean, if I think you're trying to argue that this is like the workplace culture of alienation, but that's not even true either, because I just think you're a baby. Whether you're working for a socialist state or you're working for a company, you do have to do what you're told, because the necessities of production have no regard for your arbitrary individual will. You have to submit to the necessities of production. Like, if we need it, let's say we're in a socialist planned economy. If we need, 10,000 units of iPhones for this small town, I mean, you could say that, oh, but I don't feel like producing these iPhones. Like, but that's what the necessities of production, Like, it doesn't matter what you want. You have to submit to some authority. If, like Engels said, if you're on a ship, you have to listen to the authority of the captain, because the captain's steering the ship. You can't sit around and democratically decide how you're going to steer the ship. The way you steer the ship is going to be, you're going to have to submit to engineering and physics and the ocean. And it's like, that's not alienation, dude. That's not alienation. But words of advice is, why don't you not talk about it? Just stop talking about things you don't understand and haven't studied. But you have to virtue signal to your chat and make it seem like you're like this knowledgeable guy about Marxism. And I'm telling you right now, you're not. I mean, like, probably some like Discord Chomsky guy like educated you. I don't know, but yeah, what you're saying isn't true.
Marxist concept easily defined by alienation from your labor. You have no control over what you do. You go into work and your fucking boss tells you that.
That's not I'm pissed now, dude. That's not alienation. Alienation for Marx is an extension of his humanism. So for Marx, the idea is that the mode of production, let's just say, functions in such a way that is radically alien from humanity. It seems we get this experience that there's like an AI or some kind of monster controlling everything, and that's coming at our expense, and it is completely indifferent to the reality of our humanity. That's more the kind of alienation thing. But just not having control is not alienation, because control requires knowledge and information. Let's give the example of this young woman. Does she have knowledge of all of the technical logistics, information, and whatever that determine the necessities of production and ultimately determine why she has to do the shit that she does? She doesn't. She knows she doesn't have that. No single individual does, which is why information hierarchies and forms of authority must exist in any real modern economy.
What you're going to do, here are your key performance indicators that you have to hit. Here are your targets that you have to hit. And you're basically a
Yeah, but that's not alienation, Hasan. That's not alienation. You want to know what's a really good example of alienation, Hasan? A way better one than the one you're talking about? Twitch. The fact that people try to fill the holes in their social lives and their fundamental loneliness by watching streamers and thinking that these streamers give a shit about them. That's alienation, Hasan. This shit you're talking about is not. Yeah, you have to fucking obey the necessities of production. Those are not determined by someone's will. They're determined by objective reality. But you want to know what an example of alienation really is? One time, I watched a Miskiff stream. Not all of it, but I just clicked on it, right? This was like a year ago. And the dude was just staring at a wall, and people were just giving him money. And the chat was going so fast. There were so many viewers. And I couldn't help but feel really uneased of looking at it. I was like, look at all of these people swarming, trying to like gather the warmth and attention of this guy, and they just want that warmth. And it's like a fucking, it's almost like a factory farm of alienated souls lining up to have a chance at fulfilling their loneliness, and they'll never be noticed. And it's not that I thought Miskiff's a bad guy for it, it's just that I thought it was a sad reality. That's alienation.
Or your bosses. Obviously, that's not desirable. Of course, you're not going to fucking work super hard. It's the most human thing to want to work for as little as you possibly can and get paid the most. That's what you want as a worker. And your boss wants to extract the maximum amount of surplus value from you. So they want you to work as hard as you possibly can for the least amount of money they can pay you and get away with. Basic principles of how...
This is going to be true for any economy of scale, Hasan. Even if you create your anarchist federation of democratically controlled factories, it's going to be the same thing as that, except there's just going to be people who it's going to be, anarchism, Hasan, will be the same thing, but plus excuses. They're going to be like, well, isn't this the same thing as the thing before? And they're going to be like, actually, no, because the Democratic Congress elected this. And they're going to talk to you for 12 hours explaining why it has to be the same thing. It actually doesn't matter what economic system is going on. If you have a modern economy of scale, that discontinuity between the interests of management, which are long-term, and the interests of workers, which are short-term, is going to be there. It was there under socialism. It was there in communism. And you just have to deal with that. That's an issue of scale. It's not an issue of managers being greedy. If the managers want to fulfill any goal whatsoever, that's what you have to do.
capitalist organizations of the economy works. This is like normal human shit. The point is, if you had an ownership over the means of production, if you had more ownership over what you were doing, if you had more control.
So Hasan's a Twitch streamer. So he's saying this, and I bet you anything in his head, he's talking about like, well, you know, I have a computer here and I can control my streams. And what's the problem? And when you think of it that way, there's no problem. But when it comes to industries of scale and anything of scale, no individual is going to have ownership or control. You're going to have to obey realities that are entirely outside the scope of your individual comprehension.
Over what your output was going to be, you would be excited to work. You would love what you're doing. Even if you're doing something that is backbreaking, menial, you would still recognize that this is necessary work.
Yeah, guys, it's just like streaming. Like, if you could be a streamer like me and make 50K a month and choose the times, you'd love it. I love it. That's the same thing, but for all society. And coal miners. Okay, any coal miners in the chat, guys, just be more like Hasan, okay? It's that simple. Just elect AOC and more people like AOC, and tell your local Congress people that you wanna be streamers, because that'll make you happy.
That you must do because you're achieving something for yourself. And the example I will always use is, look, I fucking work for myself, dude. I do. That's why I don't mind.
Come on. Did I not fucking call that? This dude is so transparent. Did I not call that? Come on, you gotta give me that. I called that shit.
Mind streaming fucking 8 hours a day when I limit my hours. Like, that's why I didn't mind streaming 42% of the entire year last year, because I get to dictate the terms. Yeah, I have 30,000 micromanagers who tell me like, dude, what the fuck? I can't believe you're, you know, changing your hair, or I can't believe you're fucking, you know, not covering this like weird thing that I want you to cover. It's fucking bullshit. But I can ban them. I have complete control. When you're in the service industry or when you're in a job, you don't have that control.
Oh my god!
Manager to suck your cock.
Oh my
okay, you will get fired. And when you get fired, you will have to rely on social safety nets that are lackluster at.
Even his chat is KegWing, dude. Hasan is literally teaching his chat that Marxism means that you're gonna be just like the Twitch streamer. Guys, Marxism is this idea where like everyone's gonna be like just like Hasan, like a Twitch streamer, and like you're gonna have your own computer, you're gonna be able to ban whoever you want. I mean, what? People have to work in mines and factories, and we still have to do like construction labor and no. It's just. Okay, dude, I'm sorry. Hasan is literally the Marie Antoinette of so. I used to think ContraPoints was that. Okay, no. Hasan is the Marie Antoinette of political Twitch. The dude is literally out here just saying, let them eat cake. He is literally the Marie Antoinette of fucking political Twitch.
Okay, ineffective. And also, you will lose your fucking healthcare, which is terrifying. I no longer have those fears. I have still some alienation from my labor, obviously. But having said that...
Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Dude, you're a millionaire, dude. What do you make in a month? You make like at least 200K a month. And this bruh's talking about alienation from... Bruh, come on, man. Get the fuck out of here.
Because, you know, Amazon still owns and operates these platforms. They still have certain regulations that I have to abide by. I have contracts that I have contractual obligations that I need to follow. All that good stuff. However...
guys, so Marxism is this radical idea that, like, there should be no rules, okay? You do what you want.
However, I have significantly less alienation from my work. So my goal, my hope, is that people can all get to a point where, even if they're fucking cleaning toilets...
So what Hasan means by socialism is the gig economy, like DoorDash. You're gonna be taking gigs. Well, I mean, to be fair, everyone can just, you know, open an OnlyFans, right? Everyone can just do that. You own your own means of production. It's yours. That's not alienation. That's not alienation, right, Hasan? Because they own the means of production. That's not alienation. Sex work, quote unquote. That's not alienation. That's not alienation. That's the road to socialism.
Okay, even if they're in the service industry, they recognize that what they're doing is bettering their own lives. They are getting positive incentives rather than the negative incentives of lack of remuneration if you are fucking fired. Because everything that motivates us right now under our current design, under our current organization of the economy, is the fear that you will fucking die, the fear that you won't be able to put a roof over your head, the fear that you won't be able to put food on your table, clothes on your back. If you don't work, you're not going to get those things.
That's true for any society. People have to work, Hasan. That's why Lenin said, he who does not, during the wartime, because it's a fucking war, he said, he who does not work will not eat. If you want to be lazy, then why should you be entitled to fucking anything? So what? Socialism means you just get to be a bum and you don't have to work? Literally Twitch streamer socialism. What about UBI? I'm for it. But look, I want people to be able to work less. Americans work too long. But you're still going to have to work. You got to work, dude. Life is work. What's my job? I'm a bum, dude. I'm a Twitch streamer. But the difference between me and Hasan is that I'm not out here trying to tell you that this lifestyle and this profession I'm pursuing, that's socialism and workers are just going to be able to live like that. That's not true. That's not fucking true.
Sure, but I would say using yourself as an example is kind of confusing because it's not the same as working 9 to 5 at fucking McDick's. How would Marxism make working at a fast food place more rewarding? What would ease the alienation? There was an incredible example from a pizza place that I will show you, okay? There was...
A chatter called him out. He literally had to have a chatter call him out.
A pizza shop. There was a pizza shop in Ohio that decided to distribute a day's profit amongst his employees for one fucking day. Turns out, you know what happened? There were 220 orders. The shop shared that it received about $6,300 in sales and $1,200 in tips, which
that's an interesting example. It's not enough for a study to qualify like a conclusion for a study. That's a good example, but the issue is that that doesn't have anything to do with your point. Just because profits are being shared doesn't mean they don't have to obey authorities and rules. So that's not a good example, Hasan. They don't have control over how many pizzas they're going to have to sell, for example, and how many pizzas they have to make.
Which would be divided amongst his employees. It thanked all its customers. They got $78 an hour. That, when adjusted to their regular fucking payment, which is like around $12 an hour or whatever the fuck, if they're lucky, implies that whatever that difference is literally what is known as surplus labor value.
Please stop, Hasan. Please stop. What is this? What is this, dude? Can you stop? Please never talk about Marxism again. Value only happens at the aggregate level. It doesn't happen at the fucking level of pizza shops. And even at the level of the pizza shop, the law of value is still happening. So just because you're paying everyone equally doesn't mean there's not surplus value going on. There is. You just don't know what you're talking about. So, Hasan, Marx's capital and Marx's theory of exploitation doesn't mean that meanie capitalists don't want to pay their workers enough and that's why there's crisis. It's because of the very form of value itself that gives rise to crisis and gives rise to surplus value. It is not because of the amount of money capitalists are paying their workers.
What you are generating for the business that you are not getting back. Capitalists understand it as profit. It is the most normal thing in a capitalist organization of the economy. Now, this is one way that you can immediately remedy the situation.
Okay, surplus value is not the same as profit, dude.
Wouldn't you have to subtract some of that to pay for ingredients and utilities and rent? Yes, of course. Of course. Now, in a democratic organization, what you do with the $75,000 or what you do with the additional money that you have generated in the form of profit would be democratically decided on. So in a
This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Why would a fucking pizza worker know the how-to invest capital wisely to grow the pizza shop? Just because you fucking make pizzas doesn't mean you know how to market, doesn't mean you know how to get the right location. It doesn't mean you actually know how to invest the capital in the right machine. You don't know all those things just by working at one. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Democratic design in a workplace, like, this doesn't automatically mean like you fucking distribute all of the fucking dollars back to the workers themselves. Workers themselves could get together, if it's a small pizza shop, and decide, hey, you know what? We are going to take a pool of these funds that we're going to accumulate over the course of the fucking month, and we're going to spend it on marketing. This is going to be our marketing budget, marketing expenditure. They're going to say, hey, we're going to buy cleaning supplies, like extra cleaning supplies, because I'm the janitor and I'm saying like we need additional.
You know, Hasan, what you're talking about is workplace culture, not a fundamental transformation of the relations of production. And that's not something that's just political or happens voluntarily. But here's the thing, Hasan, that I just want to get to you. There's such thing as a balance. So China has a better system where there's a balance. The input of workers should go into consideration. They should listen to the input of the people on the ground to know about, what do they need? What kind of cleaning supplies do they need? What kind of, things would make it easier and more productive? But there should be no sovereign control. They don't necessarily know. You can have input without giving full control.
Cleaning supplies that would make this way more efficient. That's how you would operate rather than with.
So socialism, by the way, Hasan, doesn't actually contain any prescriptions about how workplaces have to be run. So a socialist pizza shop, whatever that means, could also not pay the workers shit and still be socialist. Now, would it be culturally socialist? Thank you, Ozymandias. That's a different question, but materially, it would still be socialist. China has no sovereign control. Well, so here's the system China has. So China has institutions within a given enterprise, which is accountable to the workers. The workers elect representatives, and these representatives have a mandatory seat on the board of directors, and they have the power to they have the mandatory seat, and that is mandated by the Communist Party. Now, do they have all the seats? No. Do they control everything? No. But they have a profound degree of control. That is, and it's mandated by the Communist Party that they have that level of input.
With a top-down approach where you're just like, yeah, fuck you, here's what you get. Once again, that's revenue, you fool. Dude, shut the fuck up. It doesn't matter. Okay, limit that then. Like, lower it by $1,000. Who gives a fuck, idiot? Why is this so fucking hard for you to understand? We're talking about theory right now, okay?
No, you're not, Hasan. This is not theory. Shut up.
Okay? It doesn't matter if it's 78. Instead of 78, it's fucking $60 an hour, okay? That's still 3x what you would... More than 3x. That's fucking 6x of what you would average, what you would make average. And this doesn't mean that like all work is equally paid, okay? Who takes the risk from lawsuits and whatnot? A shared pool of funds, brother. Just like when you have a union.
I'm shitting on co-ops at this point, just to like play the devil's advocate, but no, that's not true. Your shared fund is not the only thing that's going to be in trouble when it comes to lawsuits.
You literally fucking pay.
Like, because lawsuits aren't just about money. Mostly they are, but they're not just about that.
Union dues so you can hire your own lawyers against the corporation that decides to hire anti-union lawyers. Okay, that's how it works. It's literally how insurance works. Thank you for the...
Hasan thinks co-ops are socialism, when in reality, co-ops exist under capitalism, and they may not exist under socialism. It has nothing to do with socialism proper. Socialism is about something that is at the scale of countries. Socialism happens at scale of countries. It doesn't happen at the scale of a pizza shop.
Jeopardy contestant that said, what is insurance? We use it all the time in every other aspect of our...
Thank you, anonymous gifter.
Lives. Collectivize the wins and collectivize the losses. So union is going to fight the case. What? Omega law? If everyone had a stake or a percentage ownership in the business, both in the means of production that they buy into with their labor over the course of an extended period of time, then yes, they would literally do it. It's like if you're... Think about it from the point of view of your fucking daddy's business.
They will, but at that point, they're very privileged because most jobs are wastes of time, dude. Most jobs are low paying. Not because they have to be low paying per se, but because they're bullshit jobs that don't need to exist in the first place. And you're basically forcing those jobs to exist by like turning them all into co-ops.
That you probably have, right? Your daddy's going to do it.
Okay, question for the chat. Why do we have a service industry? Think about it. Because the American worker works 8 hours a day and doesn't have time to serve themselves. So they created an entire industry and that industry too is an 8-hour workday, and it's a feedback loop. So you waste people's time and you prop up industries based on people's waste of time. You see how it works? So the service industry, they make the people work 8 hours a day, and they don't have time to attend to their own services. So what does this do? Creates more service industries. When people serve themselves at restaurants, what people can do is make their own food. I think most of the food people should consume is from their own kitchen. Like, I want to have a family, and I want to have family food. And I want a wife who likes to cook. Call me sexist, whatever, but who likes doing it. I'm not saying I want to force her, but like who likes doing that. And that's where I want to get my food. I don't want to get food, I don't want to get it from restaurants, I want a wife who makes me food. And that's how it should be, right? And if we had a shorter workday, we can spend more time with our families, and we can spend more time making families and also making babies.